Hey, and welcome. I'm Nicole Benter, and I read this book, Breath, recently, and it's so good and so interesting, plus has so many different ideas interweaving through that I was motivated and inspired to do this summary of 10 key points of breathing. So I'm going to get right to it because that's the way I roll. So the perfect breath. So that's the first point, and I do have that up here. I'm like back in my teaching days now, but it really helps me to learn things deeper too, and hopefully this is helpful to you too. The key is to breathe less through your nose and exhale completely. So slow and paced breath. The perfect breath, this is part of point number one, key takeaway number one, the perfect breath entails 5.5 seconds or so of inhale through the nose, 5.5 seconds or so of exhale for 5.5 liters. I don't know exactly how many liters I'm breathing, but I do know that most adults or most humans and kids overbreathe. We breathe too much air in and out and too rapidly. So really slow down the breath. And the key is through the nose, which I'll get to. So slow, paced, and less. And that's if you want to get health, endurance, and longevity benefits. Yes, please. Okay. The second key takeaway, don't mouth breathe. So in his book, Breath, James Nestor, he went through a experiment with another breathing guy, and they plugged their nose for 10 days and only did mouth breathing, and then did the opposite, plugged or shut their mouth and only did nose breathing. And then throughout it, they had a lot of data points taken on their health benefits and health detriments. So the bad effects of mouth breathing, see, I have my little notes on the other side. It raises your blood pressure, which causes hypertension, which can lead to things like heart attack and stroke. It lowers your heart rate variability, and these are all findings that they actually measured and found through this experiment and a lot of other data. So lowers the heart rate variability. Sometimes I combine words. Which is a measure of your nervous system balance, which means your body's in a state of stress. It raises your stress hormones, stress. And through mouth breathing, you can take in more bacteria, which can then lead to infections. And you can get, since you're not using your nose, you're kind of losing your nose, use it or lose it. You get infections, and then that can lead to sickness. It increases pulse, it decreases body temperature, it decreases mental clarity. It leads to irritation, fatigue, anxiety, and James and the other guy, what's his name? They just felt awful. And it also decreases your athletic performance. They did this whole test on the bicycle while they were only nose breathing or only mouth breathing. And his athletic performance was higher while just nose breathing. And it decreases the athletic performance because your body is in a state of stress and you feel fatigued. So we have mouths, to eat and chew and talk, but also it's a backup breathing system. Nose is the key. So that's point number 3. Nose breathe. Yes, for sure. So why you should nose breathe is, it's simple but amazing, which is so many things in life, right? Your nose moistens and humidifies the air. So it moistens and humidifies. It also filters or purifies or cleans or clears the air, okay? I love all those little nose hairs in there too. Like, they're doing their job when you use them. That's the key. And then it also heats the air. So you're not breathing the super cold air, which is key for me here in the winter. It also helps to slow and pressurize the air so that the lungs can extract more O2, which is what your tissues and cells are really needing, is that oxygen. Breathing through your nose makes it so that the bacteria doesn't flourish and, fewer infections and colds. You can absorb 18% more oxygen while breathing through your nose rather than mouth breathing. It also increases nitric oxide, which is great for you. And the nose can trigger hormones and chemicals that lower blood pressure, ease digestion, regulates heart rate, opens vessels in our toes. Great. There is a difference between right and left nostril breathing, gas pedal, brake pedal, and he goes into that in the book. Point number 4, exhale. Actually, exhale. So exhale for longer. Try and get all the air out. And what a lot of findings are is that our diaphragms are under engaged. Most humans are not using the capacity of the diaphragms. There's an exercise, and in the bonus I am going to get into exercises, but there is an exercise that he explains while he exhales. He counts from 1 to 10 on a repeat until he gets out the last molecule of air. So CO2 is king, or CO2 is really key. This is point 5A. I've got 5B too because they're related. And I only wanted 10 points. So CO2 is actually more important than the oxygen, which is really interesting and a key fact in this book. And also I read The Oxygen Advantage, and I'm linking in a few ideas from that too. So to understand that, I was going to print out a cool visual, but just, look up a cool visual. When the oxygen goes into a cell, then CO2 comes out, therefore increasing the CO2 that you breathe. So when you have more CO2 that you're exhaling, that means that your cells and tissues and organs are getting more O2, which is what you want. So quick and heavy breaths, don't want to do that because it purges CO2 and then your CO2 levels go down. You do want slow breaths and a smaller amount because then that raises the CO2, and which then increases the O2 in our tissues and organs and muscles. And then he goes into, about possible ways to stop a panic attack and anxiety. And the key, he says, maybe the key is not to take a deep breath. Maybe the key is to, he says, hold your breath. But it sounds like it's more so to breathe less. So taking slower breaths in a smaller amount can help a panic attack before it hits, which they went into more in the book. So again, breathing slow, less, and through the nose balances the respiratory gases in the body and sends the maximum amount of oxygen to the maximum amount of tissues. So our cells have the maximum amount of electron reactivity. Therefore, you're healthy. Electron reactivity, like O2, is exchanged. And that's what you want, because it's really interesting that cancer thrives in low oxygen environments. So we want high oxygen and oxygen exchanged. He did mention on a little side note that the ideal amount, the healthy amount of exhaled CO2 is 5.5%. We're not really measuring that, but you might find a gadget. I'll go into gadgets that can measure it if you're super into this. So chemoreceptors, that's point 5B. So chemoreceptors are it's a cluster of neurons that are located at the base of your brainstem. I think I should be taller to fit in this, huh? And it activates the need to breathe. This is really interesting stuff. So if you breathe too slowly or too quickly, then that'll change the amount of CO2 that I just went over. And then your chemoreceptors will send messages to your brain to breathe either, quicker or slower. So the body determines how fast and often we breathe by the level of CO2, not by the level of O2, which is why CO2 is super key. Great athletes have trained their chemoreceptors to withstand extreme fluctuations in CO2 without panic, which is what I was like really like trying to read for and look for, because I'm into trying to be an athlete too. And also a way to treat anxiety, anorexia, panic, obsessive compulsive disorder. In his book, he goes into this whole breathing in a higher amount of CO2 and how to not panic. And it's really just your body is thinking that it really needs to breathe more, but it actually doesn't. So that's really interesting in training the chemoreceptors to withstand more fluctuations in CO2. So, lung capacity. This is interesting because I'm all about longevity. So the greatest indicator of lifespan, what is it? I was thinking before reading this book, maybe genetics, maybe diet, maybe exercise, social interactions, all those things. But in this book, they say it's having a large lung capacity. That is most directly correlated to lifespan. So then I start thinking, well, how do I increase my lung capacity? I'm into that. Because he does explain how lung capacity decreases with age after you hit like 30 or 40 or something like that. So he does make a key point throughout the book and in this section that internal organs and like our nose and mouth shape are malleable. We can change them nearly any time through the activities and exercises that we do. He mentions that walking and cycling can boost lung capacity by 15%. I wonder what else, because I already walk and cycle, and yeah, I like some chemoreceptor durability and some large lung capacity. And in wondering what else, that kind of gets to exercises. There are some other exercises, and we can also further look things up. So oral posture, the correct oral posture. I'm into this, and I've been talking with my daughters who are ages 5 and 4 about this, because actually one of my daughters, she's just an open mouth person, and then the other isn't. So this stuff is really important and really affects your health. So I've been trying to work with her on this in a light and fun, playful way. Oral posture, the perfect or the ideal oral posture is lips together, teeth slightly touching. I can't talk while I'm doing the posture. And tongue on the roof of your mouth. The magic spot. There is a kid's book called ABC, Always Breathe Correctly, which I have, which is good. And that's the magic spot. And when you say "n," your tongue is on the magic spot. So that might also be called mewing, the lips together, teeth slightly touching, and tongue on the roof of the mouth. And then while you're in that posture, you breathe slowly through the nose into the abdomen. Oh, and he talks about posture too of the body, shoulders and neck back, and J spine shape, not the old hunch over at the desk. So there's that. Point number 8, we're on 8. That is great. Chew. He has a super long chapter on like studying skulls and stuff. I'm not like a big history dig it up type girl, but anyway, quick takeaway points is that our modern diet is too soft. We're chewing less now than we did way long ago. So it is good to do some hard chewing. And there's actually some like hard chewing gum out there that you can get. But I think that it leads into the whole modern diet. And so I'm going to be trying to chew more. It also helps with the digestion. Autonomic nervous system. Breathing is a power switch for the autonomic nervous system. Many of you know there's 2 parts to the autonomic nervous system. There's the parasympathetic, which helps to relax and restore. And then there's the sympathetic, which gets you ready for action, fight and flight. And I have a lot of notes on this, but I skip some of them. The sympathetic stress takes a second to activate, of like, I gotta go, I just got scared or I just got triggered. But turning it off and returning to a state of relax and restore can take an hour or more. So that's interesting. Unless you try with some of the exercises and you're, really good at shutting it off and shutting down and getting back into the relax and restore. You can also read further about parasympathetic and sympathetic in this book and in a lot of other books. But it is just interesting that breathing really turns it on and turns it off. So that leads us to point number 10, heavy breathing, which he recommends to sometimes do. Olson was the last name of the other guy that he did the experiment with, and he's a big breather guy out of Australia, I think. So heavy breathing. So Wim Hof, we probably have thought or heard of Wim Hof when we think of breathing. He's been super popular, and Tummo. So that involves quick and heavy breaths, a couple hundred of them. And how that works or what happens is the quick and heavy breath and cold exposure, that stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, which we just talked about, and it releases immune cells to heal wounds, fight pathogens, and infections. It releases stress hormones like norepinephrine that helps to redirect blood flow to the muscles and the brain, and adrenaline that helps with energy, and cortisol that helps to downgrade short-term inflammatory immune responses. So in summary on heavy breathing, conscious heavy breathing, like practicing Tummo, teaches us to be the pilots of our autonomic nervous system and our bodies, not the passengers. So that's another key takeaway of like the pilot of our, like going back to the nose, it's really use it or lose it. So the key is, even while exercising, to breathe only through the nose, not through the mouth, which I've been really trying to focus on and do, and it's hard to do while running uphill, but that's one of the exercises. So let's get into also gadgets that were mentioned, because sometimes we're wondering, like, can I go to Amazon and buy something? So if you're wondering that, please shop local instead. That's your quick message. And so on gadgets, there's some sleep tape out there that you can get, or you can just buy 3M tape, because again, training your body 100% of the time, except when you're talking, to breathe through their nose is super key. So while you're sleeping, how many hours is that? For that's like 9 for me. Sometimes I'm in bed for 10. I love sleep. It's so key. But put in a little piece of tape wherever it feels best on your body. He went through, did he go through duct tape? Anyway, so a piece of tape to train your body to always breathe through the nose. There's also an oximeter, which, especially in COVID times, we're aware of. It measures oxygen and your heart rate. They mention a capnometer, which measures CO2 and exhaled air. I haven't found one easily, but I haven't searched. But I would be interested, like how much CO2 is in my exhaled air? If it's all about the CO2 level, what is my CO2 level? For chewing in mouth, there's a BioBlock for kids to like reposition the mouth, because sometimes it's hard to breathe through the nose due to the positioning of, or the size of your mouth or your teeth. Belfour's retainer or gum. I wasn't super into that stuff, but Anders Olson is the name of the guy. He might be creating a device too that helps to measure the nitric oxide as well as the CO2 exhaled. And then there's a lot of apps, like there's a Breathe app that you can breathe at different rates, because when you're wondering about, this key, the 5.5 seconds in and 5.5 seconds out, it's kind of nice to have something that easily measures or guides you through that timing. And it doesn't have to be exactly that. That's the perfect breath that's labeled in here, but also I have heard of a lot of others. And then that leads us into the exercises, because some involve holding breath at the top of the inhale and so forth. So let's get into the exercises. But also, before we even get into exercises and stuff, just remember the key written up here in blue. Breathe less through the nose. Exhale completely. The through the nose is just really the key part, and then also breathing less. So as a bonus for exercises, I mentioned to exhale completely. You're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Whoops. I just inhaled through my mouth. So anyway, that's how you really do the long exhale. That's a exercise. And then just the key, get a timer, time yourself, or figure it out, or do your own counts. 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out. He also mentioned some stretching and bending, and the 5 Tibetan rites, which I'm not sure if you all know that, but that was mentioned in there, and some lung expanding activities or stretches. This is one of my favorites too, is to decongest the nose. If we're all about breathing just through our nose, then what about when you're stuffing? First, avoid any mucus causing foods. But second, this is it. You plug your nose. I think you inhale and then plug your nose, but it's in the book at the very end. And then you do that. I feel like I need to really blow my nose now. But, and that helps to clear out your nose so that you can breathe through your nose. Also, like, bring a handkerchief, or I do a lot of snot rockets, honestly, outside, but not near people, especially in COVID times. So clear out your nose first, so then you can breathe through your nose. And then also alternate nostril breathing. You can do it in yoga and with different things, but changing the nostrils up and down, or through one nostril, or just constantly in one direction, depending on what benefit you want to get. And I loved the humming. And the exhale, because that can increase the nitric oxide, which widens the capillaries and relaxes smooth muscles, and has some other benefits. And then also Dr. Andrew Weil had an exercise in there too, where you inhale through the nose for a count of 4, and then hold it for a count of 7, and then you exhale actually through the mouth, which I usually don't do, or try not to do, with a sound of whoosh, for a count of 8, and you repeat that at least 4 times, and that's really relaxing. So the key takeaway exercise is you got it. Breathe through the nose, no matter what you're doing. That's that. Okay. Thanks, you guys. Bye.